Padre Pio warned, "If you have certain things in your home, you do not have a home. You have an open door, and what comes through that door at night, while you sleep, while your children sleep, is something that no lock, no alarm, no fence can stop. Only God can stop it. But God will not force his way into a house that has already been given to the enemy through the objects you chose to keep." In 1956, Padre Pio appeared through the documented gift of bilocation in the home of a Catholic family in Pescara. He had never been invited. He had never been told the address. The family had never written to him or visited San Giovanni Rotondo. And yet there he stood in the hallway of their apartment at 2 in the morning, visible to only one person, the mother, who was on her knees praying the rosary because she had run out of every other option. He looked at her with an expression she later described as a mixture of compassion and fury. And then he pointed. He pointed at 3 things in that home. 3 objects that the family loved. 3 objects that looked harmless, even beautiful. And he said one word: Brucia, burn. This changed everything for me. When I first encountered the testimony of Antonietta Ferretti in the Capuchin archives, I spent an entire week walking through my own house in Coventry, looking at every object, every decoration, every gift, every inherited thing, and asking myself a question I had never asked before. Where did this come from? And more importantly, what came with it? Because Padre Pio's warning to the Ferretti family was not just for them. It was for every Catholic home in the world. And when you hear what those 3 objects were and what they were doing to that family in the spiritual realm, you will never look at your own possessions the same way again. Here is what I promise you. You will learn the exact 3 objects that Padre Pio identified as spiritual doorways in the Ferretti home. You will understand why each one was dangerous, not because of what it looked like, but because of what it carried. You will discover the spiritual mechanism by which ordinary objects become channels for dark influence. And you will learn the specific test that Padre Pio taught for determining whether something in your home needs to be removed and destroyed. Not donated, not sold, not stored in the attic, destroyed. But before I tell you about the Ferretti family, I need you to understand a principle that Padre Pio considered foundational to spiritual protection, a principle that most modern Catholics have either forgotten or never learned. And it is this: objects have spiritual memory, not consciousness, not will, but memory. Like a sponge absorbs water, physical objects absorb the spiritual atmosphere in which they exist. An object that has been present during prayers absorbs prayer. An object that has been blessed by a priest carries that blessing like a charge. But an object that has been present during sin, during occult practice, during hatred or violence or spiritual corruption, absorbs that darkness with equal efficiency. And when you bring that object into your home, you bring the darkness with it. It does not matter that you bought it at a charming market stall. It does not matter that it was a gift from someone you love. It does not matter that it has been in your family for generations. What matters is what it carries. And most people, Padre Pio said, have absolutely no idea what their possessions carry. The Ferretti family lived on the 3rd floor of an apartment building on Via Roma in Pescara, a coastal city on the Adriatic. Enzo Ferretti was a postal clerk, a quiet, methodical man who went to Mass on Sundays and considered that sufficient for his spiritual life. His wife, Antonietta, was far more devout. She prayed the rosary daily, attended Mass 3 times a week, and had a particular devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary. They had 2 children, Gianluca, aged 12, and Rossella, aged 8. By all external measures, the Ferretti household was ordinary, comfortable, and peaceful. But in the autumn of 1955, something began to change. The changes were subtle at first, so subtle that Antonietta almost missed them. But she was a woman of deep spiritual sensitivity, the kind of person who could walk into a church and know immediately whether the Blessed Sacrament was present. not by looking, but by feeling. And what she began to feel in her own home, the home where she had prayed thousands of rosaries, the home where her children had been raised in the faith, was a heaviness, a thickness in the air that had not been there before, a sense that something unwelcome had taken up residence. The first concrete sign was Gianluca. He had always been a gentle boy, an altar server at the parish church of San Ceteo, obedient and kind. But in October of 1955, he began having violent outbursts of anger, explosive, disproportionate rage over trivial matters. A dropped glass at dinner would trigger screaming. A sibling's innocent comment would provoke a fury that left the boy trembling and pale afterward, as if he could not understand what had just happened. The parish priest suggested it was adolescence. The doctor suggested it was nerves, but Antonietta knew it was neither. She knew because the outbursts only happened inside the apartment. At school, at church, at his grandmother's house, Gianluca was his normal self. The rage was location-specific. It belonged to the apartment. The second sign was the dreams. Rosella, the 8-year-old, began waking in the middle of the night, screaming about a figure she called the tall man. She described him the same way every time, very tall, completely black, with no face, standing in the corner of her bedroom near the window. Antonietta checked the room. There was nothing there. She blessed the room with holy water. The dreams continued. She placed a picture of the Sacred Heart above Rosella's bed. The dreams continued. She moved Rosella into the master bedroom. The tall man followed her there. The third sign was the most disturbing of all. Objects in the apartment began moving on their own, not dramatically, not poltergeist-style theatrics, small, quiet displacements. A coffee cup moved from one side of the table to the other. A book that had been on the shelf appeared on the kitchen counter. A rosary that Antonietta kept on her nightstand was found 3 mornings in a row on the floor by the front door, as far from the bedroom as it could possibly be without leaving the apartment. As if something was trying to push the sacred objects out. Antonietta told her husband. Enzo, the rational postal clerk, dismissed it. The children were playing tricks. The wind had moved things. Memory was unreliable. There was a logical explanation for everything. But Antonietta saw the fear in his eyes even as he denied it. She saw the way he avoided being alone in the apartment. She saw the way he turned on every light when he came home in the evening, something he had never done before. The fourth sign, and the one that finally broke through Enzo's rational resistance, happened on Christmas Eve of 1955. The family had set up their small nativity scene on the shelf in the main room, as they did every year. It was a simple ceramic set that had been blessed by their parish priest years earlier. On Christmas morning, Antonietta found the figure of the Christ child on the floor, shattered into 5 pieces. The rest of the nativity was untouched. No one had been in the room. The windows were closed. The shelf was stable. Only the Christ child had fallen, and it had fallen with enough force to break into fragments, as if it had been thrown rather than dropped. Enzo stood in the doorway, staring at the broken pieces, and for the first time, Antonietta saw his denial crack. He said nothing, but he crossed himself, and his hand was trembling. There was also the matter of the cold spots. Antonietta noticed them first in November, specific areas of the apartment that were inexplicably cold, regardless of the heating. The corner of Rosella's bedroom, where the tall man appeared in her dreams, was always several degrees colder than the rest of the room. The wall opposite the bed in the master bedroom, the wall where the mirror hung, radiated cold like an open window, even on mild days. And the windowsill in Gianluca's room, where the carved horse sat, was cold to the touch even in direct afternoon sunlight. These were not drafts. These were not architectural defects. Enzo checked. He sealed every crack, every gap. The cold remained, because the cold was not coming from outside. It was coming from within the objects themselves, radiating outward like spiritual frost. By January of 1956, Antonietta was desperate. She had tried everything she knew: holy water in every room, blessed candles burning through the night, novenas to the Blessed Virgin, to Saint Michael, to her guardian angel. Nothing worked. The heaviness persisted. Gianluca's rages worsened. Rosella's nightmares became nightly. And Antonietta herself began to feel a physical pressure on her chest during prayer, as if something was pressing down on her, trying to stop the words from leaving her lips. And that is when something extraordinary happened, something that, even after all these years of researching Padre Pio's life, still makes the hair on my arms stand up. On the night of February 7th, 1956, at approximately 2 in the morning, Antonietta was kneeling in the hallway of her apartment, praying the rosary. She had moved her prayer to the hallway because the pressure she felt in the main room and the bedrooms was too intense. The hallway felt slightly clearer, slightly less oppressive, as if the darkness had not yet fully claimed that narrow space. She was on the 3rd decade of the Sorrowful Mysteries when she smelled roses, strong, unmistakable, overwhelming roses, in February, in a hallway with no flowers, no perfume, no explanation. And then she saw him. Padre Pio was standing at the end of the hallway, near the front door. He was wearing his Capuchin habit. His hands, bearing the stigmata, were folded in front of him. His face was grave. Not angry, but grave. The face of a surgeon who knows exactly where to cut. Antonietta later testified that she was not afraid. She felt no fear at all. What she felt was an overwhelming sense of authority, as if the spiritual atmosphere of the entire apartment had shifted in an instant, the way a room changes when you open the curtains and let sunlight flood in. The heaviness retreated. Not completely, but significantly, as if the presence of Padre Pio, even through bilocation, carried a spiritual force that pushed the darkness back. He spoke to her. His voice was clear but quiet, as if he were speaking from very close, even though he stood several meters away. Antonietta, your prayers have reached heaven. That is why I am here. But your prayers cannot cleanse this home because there are 3 objects in this apartment that have been given rights. You gave them a place of honor. You gave them your affection. And through that affection, they were given authority to remain. Your prayers bounce off the walls of this apartment and return to you as suffering because the objects redirect them. You are fighting a war, and the enemy's soldiers are living in your own house, wearing the disguise of things you love. Stay with me here, because what Padre Pio identified next, the 3 specific objects and the reason each one was dangerous, contains the most practical spiritual protection teaching I have ever encountered. Padre Pio raised his hand and pointed toward the master bedroom. He said, "The mirror." In the master bedroom, hanging on the wall opposite the bed, was a large oval mirror in an ornate bronze frame. Antonietta had purchased it 3 years earlier at an antique market in Chieti, about 30 kilometers from Pescara. She had loved it immediately. The frame was beautiful, covered in carved roses and vines, clearly handmade, clearly old. She had bargained the price down from the merchant, a traveling dealer who sold estate items from across the region and had carried it home triumphantly. It was, she told friends, the most beautiful thing in her apartment. Padre Pio said, that mirror hung for 40 years in the bedroom of a woman who practiced divination. She used it as a scrying glass. She called spirits through it, and when she died and her possessions were sold, the mirror carried the imprint of every session, every invocation, every dark presence that had been summoned through its surface. You placed it in your bedroom, the room where you sleep, the room where your soul is most vulnerable, most open, most unguarded. And every night, what was invited through that glass 40 years ago continues to arrive. Not because the woman is still calling, because the door she opened was never closed. Antonietta felt the blood drain from her face, the mirror, the beautiful, beloved mirror. She slept facing it every night. Her children walked past it every morning. It had been in the apartment for 3 years, the exact span of time since the disturbances began. Padre Pio then pointed toward a shelf in the main room. He said, "The necklace." On a small velvet stand on the shelf sat a gold necklace with a deep red stone, a garnet set in an intricate gold filigree. It had belonged to Antonietta's grandmother, Nonna Celestina, who had died in 1948. Antonietta treasured it above all her possessions, not for its monetary value, which was modest, but for its sentimental value. It was her last physical connection to the grandmother who had raised her, who had taught her the rosary, who had shaped her faith. But Padre Pio's next words shattered the purity of that memory. Your grandmother was a good woman, a woman of faith, but she carried a secret for 30 years. In 1918, after the death of her first child, she went to a maga, a fortune teller, in Sulmona. She went only once, in desperation, in grief, and the maga gave her that stone. She told your grandmother it would protect her future children from death. Your grandmother wore it every day for the rest of her life. She never told her priest. She never confessed the visit to the fortune teller. And the stone, which was consecrated not to God, but to something else during a ritual your grandmother did not understand, has been an open channel in your family for 2 generations. It passed from your grandmother to your mother, who wore it without knowing, and from your mother to you. And the protection it promised, it is a lie. It does not protect. It claims. It claims a right over each generation that wears it. And your daughter, little Rosella, has been sleeping 30 feet from this stone every night. The tall man she sees is not a nightmare. It is what the stone has been calling. Now, let me pause here because I know what some of you may be thinking. This sounds extreme. This sounds superstitious. How can an object, a piece of jewelry, a mirror, carry spiritual power? I had the same reaction when I first read this testimony, but then I remembered something that every Catholic already believes, even if they do not think about it consciously. We believe that a rosary, when blessed by a priest, carries a real spiritual charge. We believe that holy water, blessed in a specific ritual, has genuine power against evil. We believe that the Eucharist, bread and wine consecrated by a priest, becomes the literal body and blood of Christ. We believe that physical objects can carry spiritual reality. If that is true for blessed objects, why would it not be true for cursed ones? If a prayer of blessing can charge a rosary with grace, why could a ritual of darkness not charge a stone with something else? This is not superstition. This is the logical extension of what we already believe about the spiritual nature of the material world. And Padre Pio, who lived at the intersection of the physical and spiritual worlds more completely than perhaps any saint of the modern era, saw this with perfect clarity. He then pointed one final time toward the children's bedroom. He said, "The horse." In Gianluca's room, on the windowsill, sat a small carved wooden horse. It was about 6 inches tall, dark wood, carefully detailed, with an expression that Antonietta had always thought was charming. Gianluca had received it 2 years earlier, during the feast of San Ceteo, from a street vendor outside the church. The boy had been fascinated by it. He kept it on his windowsill and sometimes held it while falling asleep. Padre Pio said, "That figure was not carved as a toy. It was carved as an offering. The man who sold it to your son had purchased a collection of such figures from a region where they are created as part of a folk tradition that has nothing to do with the Christian faith. The figures are dedicated in a ritual to spirits of the land, to forces that predate Christianity in that region. Your son holds it in his hands at night, and through his innocent touch, the dedication of that object reaches his soul. The rage he feels is not his own. It is the rage of what lives inside that carving. It enters through his hands and it finds a home in his young heart, because a child's heart is open and trusting and does not know how to guard itself against what it cannot see. 3 objects: a mirror from a dead diviner, a necklace from a grandmother's secret visit to a fortune teller, a carved horse dedicated to pagan spirits, each one acquired innocently, each one loved by the family, each one operating as a spiritual doorway, a punto di accesso, an access point through which darkness entered the home and attacked its inhabitants. And here is the spiritual boomerang that Padre Pio explained, the mechanism that made the situation progressively worse instead of better. Every time Antonietta prayed in that apartment, every rosary, every novena, every pleading prayer to the Blessed Virgin, the spiritual energy of that prayer encountered the three objects, and instead of cleansing the space, the prayer was deflected. Padre Pio used the word rimbalzare, to bounce. He said the prayers bounced off the spiritual barriers created by the objects and returned to Antonietta as suffering. Her chest pressure during prayer, the worsening of the nightmares after she placed the Sacred Heart image in Rosella's room, the escalation of Gianluca's rages after she sprinkled holy water in his bedroom. Each act of spiritual warfare increased the conflict but could not win the battle, because the enemy's strongholds were still in place. It is like trying to clean a room while the window is open during a sandstorm, Padre Pio told her. You sweep and the sand keeps coming. Close the window first, then sweep. Close the window first. Remove the objects, then pray, then cleanse, then reclaim. This is what I mean when I say that Padre Pio's teaching has direct, immediate implications for your life right now. How many Catholics do you know who pray novenas for protection, who sprinkle holy water throughout their homes, who burn blessed candles, and yet the spiritual atmosphere of their homes never changes? They pray, and nothing shifts. The nightmares continue. The arguments persist. The heaviness remains. And they wonder why God is not answering their prayers. But according to what Padre Pio revealed through the Ferretti case, the problem may not be with their prayers at all. The problem may be with what is in their homes. The prayers are being offered faithfully, but the spiritual doorways are still open. The objects are still in place. And every prayer bounces off those open doorways and returns as frustration, as confusion, as the devastating feeling that God has stopped listening. He has not stopped listening. Your prayers are simply not reaching him because something in your own home is blocking the path. Padre Pio gave Antonietta 3 specific instructions for the 3 objects. The mirror was to be taken to the parish church and burned in the presence of the parish priest, who was to pray the prayer of St. Michael the Archangel during the burning. Not thrown away, not sold, not given to someone else, burned, because destruction by fire, accompanied by prayer, breaks the spiritual imprint permanently. Padre Pio said, what has been consecrated to darkness must be unconsecrated by fire and prayer. There is no other way. The necklace was to be brought to a priest for a specific prayer of renunciation. Antonietta was to hold the necklace in her hands in the presence of the priest and speak aloud the following words. I renounce any claim that this object has over me, my family, and my descendants. I break every chain of spiritual authority that was established through this object, knowingly or unknowingly, by any member of my family in every generation. In the name of Jesus Christ, I command every spirit attached to this object to depart and never return. Then the priest was to bless the necklace with holy water and the prayer of exorcism over objects, and Antonietta was to bury it in consecrated ground, in a Catholic cemetery, where the consecrated earth would permanently contain whatever had been attached to the stone. The carved horse was simply to be burned. Padre Pio said it did not require the same level of ritual as the mirror or the necklace, because the dedication of the figure was less intentional and less powerful. But it still needed to be destroyed. Antonietta was never to give such objects to another child. What is contaminated cannot be cleaned by changing its owner, Padre Pio said. It can only be cleaned by fire After giving these instructions, Padre Pio said one final thing to Antonietta before he disappeared. He said, "After you have removed these 3 things, wait 3 days. Do nothing spiritual for 3 days. No prayer, no rosary, no holy water. Let the apartment be empty. Let the spaces where the objects were stand vacant, because when you remove a dark presence, there is a period of transition. The spirits that have been using those objects will try to return. They will look for another foothold. If you immediately fill the space with prayer, they will know where to direct their attacks. But if you wait, if you let the silence do its work, they will lose their orientation. They will not know where to attach. And after 3 days, on the morning of the 4th day, go through every room of your apartment with a blessed candle, holy water, and a rosary. Pray 1 Hail Mary in each room. Sprinkle the holy water in every corner. And in the places where the 3 objects once stood, place a blessed image of the Sacred Heart, a blessed rosary, and a small bottle of holy water. Replace what was taken with what is given. Fill the void with God, and the apartment will be sealed." Antonietta followed every instruction to the letter. The parish priest, Father Augusto, though initially skeptical, agreed to assist after Antonietta described the bilocation in detail. The mirror was burned in the church courtyard. The flames, according to Father Augusto's own testimony, burned an unusual blue-green color for several seconds before turning normal. The necklace was prayed over, renounced, and buried in the cemetery of San Ceteo. The carved horse was burned at home, and Antonietta said the wood gave off a smell that was not the smell of burning wood, but something acrid and chemical, though the figure was solid carved timber with no paint or varnish. For 3 days, the apartment was quiet. Not peaceful exactly, but quiet, like the silence between a thunderclap and the next one. Antonietta described it as a holding of breath. On the morning of the 4th day, she performed the cleansing exactly as Padre Pio had instructed, room by room, candle, holy water, rosary, Hail Mary in each space. And in the places where the 3 objects had been, she placed a blessed image of the Sacred Heart, a blessed rosary, and a bottle of holy water from the church. The transformation was not gradual. It was immediate and unmistakable. That night, for the first time in over a year, Rosella slept through the night without waking. No tall man, no screaming, no nightmares. She slept the deep, untroubled sleep of a child who is safe. That week, Gianluca did not have a single outburst. The rage that had consumed him for months simply vanished, as if it had left with the carved horse, which, according to Padre Pio, is exactly what happened. And Antonietta, for the first time since the autumn of 1955, could pray the rosary without the crushing pressure on her chest. She knelt in the main room, in the space where the mirror had once hung, now occupied by the Sacred Heart. And she prayed all 5 decades, without interruption, without weight, without resistance. She said it felt like praying in the open air after months of praying in a sealed tomb. Enzo, the skeptic, the rational postal clerk, became the most changed of all. He began attending daily Mass. He could not explain why, except that after the cleansing, he felt a hunger for the Eucharist that he had never experienced before. It was as if the objects had been suppressing not just the spiritual life of the home, but his own capacity for faith. With the doorways closed, with the spiritual interference removed, something in Enzo that had been dormant for decades suddenly woke up. He became a Eucharistic minister at the parish. He joined the men's prayer group, and every month, without fail, he walked through the apartment with a blessed candle and holy water, performing the monthly cleansing that Padre Pio had prescribed. He did this until the day he died in 1989, 33 years of monthly home blessings. Because once you have seen what Enzo saw, once you have watched the darkness leave your home and the light return, you never take the safety of your living space for granted again. I've seen it with my own eyes, this transformation. After I heard the Ferretti story, I went through my own home in Coventry with fresh eyes, and I found something that shook me. A small ceramic figurine of a cat that my late mother had given me, which she had bought at a car boot sale years earlier. I'd always felt uneasy about it, but could never explain why. When I held it and prayed a Hail Mary, as Padre Pio suggested, I felt a distinct heaviness in my hands, almost a resistance, as if the prayer and the object were repelling each other. I took it to my parish priest, Father Michael. He blessed it with holy water, and the moment the water touched the ceramic, the figurine cracked, straight down the middle, without being dropped or struck. Father Michael looked at me and said, "That tells you everything you need to know." We burned it that afternoon, and that night, the corner of my living room where it had sat for 15 years felt different, lighter, warmer, as if something had quietly departed. Now I need to ask you a question, and I need you to sit with it, not answer it quickly, not dismiss it, but truly sit with it. What is in your home? I do not mean your furniture or your appliances. I mean the objects you have accumulated over years and decades, the things on your shelves, in your drawers, in your children's rooms. Where did they come from? Who owned them before you? What was their history before they arrived at your door? Do you have antique items whose origins you do not know? Do you have inherited jewelry whose previous owners you cannot account for? Do you have gifts from people whose spiritual lives you would not trust? Do you have souvenirs from places where non-Christian practices are common? Do you have books, figurines, symbols or artwork that reference spiritual traditions outside the Catholic faith? Padre Pio taught that the test is simple. Hold the object in your hands, pray one Hail Mary over it, and pay attention to what you feel. If you feel peace, the object is clean. If you feel resistance, heaviness, discomfort, or an inexplicable reluctance to pray while holding it, the object needs to be examined further. Bring it to a priest. Ask for a blessing. And if the priest's blessing produces a reaction, if the atmosphere of the room shifts, if you feel something release, then you have your answer. That object was carrying something that did not belong in your home. If this revelation has opened your eyes, if you feel the urgency to examine your own home with new spiritual awareness, I ask you to consider supporting this mission through the Super Thanks button below. These hidden testimonies from the Capuchin archives need to reach every Catholic family that is unknowingly living with open doors in their own homes. Your support makes that possible. Padre Pio promised that those who spread divine truth will receive special protection. Join this mission. Help us bring light into homes that have been living in unexplained darkness. I want to close with one final thought from Padre Pio, spoken to the Capuchin friars after the Ferretti case. He said, "The faithful are careful about what enters their bodies. They would not eat food they knew was poisoned. They would not drink water they knew was contaminated. But they fill their homes with objects whose spiritual origin they have never questioned. And then they wonder why their prayers feel empty, and their children have nightmares, and their marriages are cold. Guard your home as you would guard your body, because your home is the body of your family, and what enters it enters all of you. Guard your home, examine your objects, close the windows, and then pray, knowing that your prayers will finally reach heaven without bouncing off the walls. And you tonight, when you look around the place where you live, the place where your family sleeps, the place where you kneel to pray, I want you to ask yourself one question, just one. What did I bring in that I never asked God about? If you have a story about an object that changed the atmosphere of your home, share it in the comments. If you have experienced a spiritual cleansing like the one Padre Pio prescribed, tell us what happened. Your testimony could be the warning that saves another family. Type sealed in the comments if you are ready to close every spiritual door in your home this week, and share this video with every Catholic family you know. Because what Padre Pio saw in the Ferretti apartment, he said he sees in homes everywhere. The doors are open, the objects are in place, and most families have no idea.